In this lecture, we will discuss why debate for philosophy specifically. So why debate not only as a general methodological approach, but why debate can be specifically useful for teaching philosophy courses, because we believe that there are also special reasons why philosophy is a particularly good candidate subject for debate being adopted. The structure of this lecture will be quite simple. We will present three main reasons why debate can be used quite beneficially and quite efficiently in philosophy, and how the subject of philosophy is particularly well suited for debate. Here we have them all together. First, I will briefly discuss what is the specific aim of philosophical education and why debate is, in our view, an important, integral even part of that. Two, I will discuss the history of philosophy through the big debates. That basically means that I will talk about how you can approach history of philosophy with debate. How can you use the debate as a method of making students understand history of philosophy, making them interact, play out the history of philosophy, and then finally discussing immediate access to concepts and the consequences of concepts, there being concepts, and how debate can make the subject of philosophy more approachable for a lot of students who might not enjoy the subject as much in the status quo. We shall begin with the first one. Specific aim of philosophical education. Right. So if we make a generalization and we can accept that this generalization is perhaps to an extent a simplification, we could say that most subjects are taught with a specific skill set in mind, that there is a practical idea of what a student should know upon graduating from a certain school program, and usually those skills are quite tangible, and the purpose of the general education is to teach those skills. And when we say skill here, I don't mean just skill in the most common sense use of the word as something necessarily practical, as in you're doing something with your hands or something like that, but rather that there is a specific skill set, an arsenal of tools that you can use to perform certain different tasks, and that the practicality of performing these tasks is the purpose of you learning a subject. The issue here is, what makes philosophy special is that there is no applied philosophy, or maybe there is. This is perhaps a controversial thing to say. However, generally, philosophical subjects do not produce and are not aimed toward reproducing a specific skill set, a specific set of tasks and problems, and methods of solving specific problems that the students are supposed to replicate. Rather, the goal of teaching philosophy is for students to understand concepts, for students to understand arguments. And in a way, you could also say that on a much higher level of abstraction, This also is perhaps practical, you know, practical in terms of philosophy being an exercise of thought, and the practical skill set being um, how to think well, maybe not only think, also live, and such things. So we can therefore, at least roughly, identify and or maybe set our own goal, our own practical outcome that we want to achieve, which is for our students to become critical thinkers, for them to become active citizens in terms of being a political animal, uh, being active participants in the civil society, being active participants in public discussions, not only being active in terms of saying I care about politics or some other issue and I will inform myself, etc., but also active in terms of how very often in the modern times it is so easy to succumb to propaganda. And even though you might be seemingly active, being politically activated, if you're operating, um, based on propaganda and manipulation of someone who coerced you into some action, we could hardly say that you are in fact an active participant within the civil society. So if we identify this goal for philosophy, debate is, and the goals that debate has, and the benefits that the debate methodology offers, are and can be quite a quite important part of this endeavor. Some of the reasons mentioned here we already discussed in another lecture, which briefly touched upon different reasons why debate generally is good. But the idea is that we want students to be able to navigate the precarious landscapes of different arguments, of different complex disagreements that are hard to unravel, heterogeneous situations, difficult moral, ethical, or other dilemmas. And even though as philosophers we are bound to be on the side of Plato and on the side of Socrates, and have a certain maybe certain inherent distrust to debate, what we must recognize is that disagreement is a fundamental fact of our society, and our students are going to have to engage in disagreements. They're going to have to know how to defend a position. They're going to have to be able to look for weaknesses in some argument that someone has made, and debate simply is a good exercise in that. And it is also our belief that if anyone can teach students to become good citizens, it is probably philosophers who are best equipped to do that. Because the philosophers can instill values, such as arguing in goodwill, striving for logical consistency, um, trying to achieve, let's say, epistemic minimalism of trying not to assume too much, etc. And because of that, if we now agree that that philosophy has this sort of duty and position to create active citizens, to create thinkers, um, then debate is definitely something that can very well help in this endeavor. The second thing The second reason why debate can be helpful is that you can actually use debate to as a tool, perhaps as a tool of immersion. One way to look at history of philosophy is to look at it as a history of problems, history of the big debates. Now, these big debates maybe were not as dramatic as real life debate is. Maybe they took, decades, if not centuries. Maybe they took place exclusively in written form across continents. However, the form of exchanging arguments, discussing them, in our opinion, remains practically the same. And this is how debate can be a useful tool to try to build on the knowledge that the students have. Here we have an example, which is perhaps a very classic one, but imagine that that you're teaching, and you're trying to paint the intellectual backdrop for emergence of Kant and his critical philosophy. And obviously, a big problem in the pre-Kantian Western thought is the clash of rationalism and empiricism. And at a point when students get acquainted with both of them, one way to engage them even more, both in terms of understanding concepts, but also in terms of motivating them to perhaps read a bit more, gather ideas, gather arguments, is to, for instance, stage a debate, assign a team for rationalism, and assign a team for empiricism, make them debate. And as I said, they will probably engage with arguments in a different way when they are no longer just a bullet point that they have to learn for an exam, but rather something that they are actively using in this little, if I use a Wittgensteinian term, in this little game. But furthermore, they will be better equipped to deal with it. They will be better equipped to not to deal with it. I apologize. They will be better motivated to actually read more and look for ideas. The third and last reason that we offer here is that philosophy is sometimes very abstract and removed, and with debate you can grant immediate access to concepts and their consequences. One, students are often less motivated and inspired to learn when they feel alienated from the content that is being taught. Now, this does not happen only in philosophy. This happens everywhere. Mathematics is probably a common place for such complaints. And one thing that debate does, which can grant both understanding and motivation, is that students immediately receive some applicable utility from the concepts that they learn, so that the concepts immediately become tools with which they can shape the intellectual Umwelt that they inhabit. So what we mean by that is that that they can immediately use it to navigate the intellectual landscape that they inhabit. What do we mean by that? If you imagine a theoretical class about learning hammers, one way to make it more interactive, more efficient would be to give hammers to students so they can, hammer nails and, you start using hammers for, all the different purposes. And we say here, it's the same thing. We want students to immediately appreciate how concepts that they are learning about can help them deal with the world that they inhabit. And debate is one way of doing that, because one, you link concepts directly to current issues and affairs. So, and this is obviously in the cases where you actually transpose a philosophical debate into more grounded problems that occur in everyday life. But two, you basically give students the platform of debate, which suddenly changes a concept from being something that they have to memorize for a school purpose to something they can use to win, something they can use to play the game, something that grants some immediacy which is not otherwise present. This is the third reason why we think debate is especially beneficial for philosophy. Thank you.